Hello, this is Marcus Pulis, and this is Voluntary Visions. This week I'm going to be talking about another forgotten freedom fighter, in this particular case, Adam Smith, who I believe is very important, though maybe not quite as exciting as some of the others that I've covered. So this is Ethics and Economics, Adam Smith, Forgotten Freedom Fighters. In the chapter Economics, in his book Freedom, Adam Kokesh says, quote, "A voluntary society represents a free trade ideal in which all interactions are free of force and coercion. In that environment, all relations are voluntary, and we choose to engage because we think we will personally benefit. In a voluntary society, the individual person is considered the ultimate means of production. We are happier and more prosperous because all of our interactions with others enrich our lives. Violence, coercion, and conflict are unproductive. Peace, self-ownership, and free trade are essential for any society to reach its potential." End quote. To those of us who understand economics and the value of liberty, these words are self-evident. These concepts have not always been known. What today we understand as a free market economy was suggested and made popular by a man named Adam Smith in two groundbreaking works. The first one, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, in 1759, and An Inquiry into the Nature and Cause of the Wealth of Nations in 1776. Good year. Within these works, he established what would influence the freedom of everyone on the planet. The idea that the freer an economy is, the more affluent the country, would become to be set in motion as one of the most liberating times in history. With the Theory of Moral Sentiments, Smith investigates the prevailing opinions on morals and ethics of the time. Here's what he had to say about the trials of life. Quote, "The great source of both the misery and disorders of human life seems to arise overrating the difference between one permanent situation and another." End quote. Another good observation he made in this work is, quote, "If there is any society among robbers and murderers, they must at least abstain from robbing and murdering one another. So beneficence is less essential than justice is to the existence of society. A lack of beneficence will make a society uncomfortable, but the prevalence of injustice will utterly destroy it." Although this work is not considered the superior work, it is still valuable to understanding the character of Adam Smith. His moral compass certainly was moved by want to find the ethical and freer way. In his later work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Cause of the Wealth of Nations, or more commonly known as just The Wealth of Nations, is considered his masterpiece. It certainly is more influential. As free market economists draw the seed of their ideas from Smith, the list of economists who are influenced by him reads as a who's who of libertarian thought. Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, Murray Rothbard, and Milton Friedman are just a few that come to mind. What does economics have to do with freedom? The answer, quite simply, is everything. Again, Adam Kokesh points this out in his book. He says, quote, "When the principles of economics are applied only to things that can be valued in numbers, we miss out on their most important lessons. We tend to think of economics as stuff having to do with money, but many exchanges of value occur without ever being counted as numbers at all. Every human interaction can be better understood as an economic exchange. We might think this cheapens interpersonal relations, but it actually elevates them." End quote. If this is true, then if an economy is free, then it is more likely that people will be as well. These are the kinds of ideas that Adam Smith put together. He initially was not trying to be an economist. It was his goal to figure out a way for society to be more ethical. In studying how to create a moral society, he found that it had to first be economically free. Adam Smith put it this way, quote, "In general, if any branch of trade or division of labor be advantageous to the public, the freer and more general the competition, it will always be more so." End quote. Shortly after trying the theories of Adam Smith that he had suggested, Britain began to prosper. This caused many nations to move towards free trade as well. As people freed their economies, as predicted by Smith, the people became wealthier. As a result, they also drifted towards a more ethical life. The rise of Europe and America as not only economic powerhouses, but also as generous givers owes Adam Smith everything. Today, we see the opposite of this trend. The world has cast aside most of the past successes and adopted government trade interference. It is true that the world is wealthier today than it ever has been, but that is the credit to the free trade that existed in the past. Our economy is lagging and will continue to do so as the government places more and more taxes, tariffs, and regulations and other controls on our ability to trade. Government has intentionally set up monopolies and chosen winners and losers because lobbyists pay off Washington. The market, when left alone, will correct itself. The Federal Reserve has again manipulated the money supply, which creates bubbles and must eventually burst. All of this, Adam Smith predicted. Smith warned against empowering traders to collaborate as the government does today. Quote, "People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for the merriment and diversion. But the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or in some contrivance to price. But though the law cannot hinder people of the same trade from sometimes assembling together, it ought to do nothing to facilitate such assemblies, much less to render them necessary." End quote. With central planning of any kind, we wind up with trade being still stifled, and this forces people to price fix. Thus, larger companies push out smaller innovators. The free market stops all of this manipulation. If you can do it cheaper or faster, then you will obtain a market share, no matter your economic position. Smith believed in the nature of the market. He felt that any unfairness would work itself out based on economic laws. It was the, quote, "invisible hand of nature, the natural process of trade, which would direct the course of prices." Smith had a real sense of humanity. Quote, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from the regard of our own interests." End quote. By coming together freely, we add value to each other and our products and services. The only controls that should be in place are whether the customers are willing or not willing to buy. Quote, "The real and effective discipline which is exercised over a workman is that of his customers. It is the fear of losing their employment which restrains his frauds and corrects his negligence." End quote. Smith understood that the work that we each do has value. Quote, "Labor was the first price and original purchase, money that was paid for all things. It was not by gold or by silver, but by labor, that all wealth of the world was originally purchased." End quote. The product of anyone's labor cannot find a real value if the central planners decide to fund this or that project and not another. In Smith's time, poverty was rampant. Solving this problem needed to happen before society could be ethical or happy. It is more likely that people will steal or even murder if they see no hope for the future. Therefore, taking on the economy and doing everything we can to give each person a chance to succeed is the key to a prosperous people. Smith said, quote, "No society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the greater part of the members are poor and miserable." He also commented, "No complaint is more common than that of scarcity of money." I know that's true in my life. As the past couple hundred years has shown, and as Adam Smith predicted, the freer an economy is, the more money the people have, and the happier those people are. Smith was not against government, but he figured out that the state is no different in its actions and consequences than the individual. Quote, "It is the maxim of every prudent master of a family, neither to attempt to make at home what it will cost him more to buy than to buy. Make than to buy." Let me try that again. "It is the maxim of every prudent master of a family, never to attempt to make at home what it will cost him more to make than buy. What is prudence in the conduct of every private family can scarce be folly in that of a great kingdom." End quote. He also called for the specialization of labor. Our world could not exist without it. Just in the building of one automobile, we can see that each part is made by a company which specializes in engines, windshields, tires, everything. Imagine how much more it would cost if each automobile company had to be able to build everything and employ people to put it all together. The cost and sheer size of the factory needed to produce it would drive the prices up so far that most people would not be able to afford the vehicle. And you add to that the fact that some companies are more skilled at making certain parts. The division of labor allows the price to be lower and the quality to be better. What Smith taught us is that people are more productive when they make their own decisions as it relates to their own money. The individual should decide how much something is worth if he wants to sell. The customer also decides how much it is worth by figuring out how much he is willing to pay for that item. When the market decides on its own, then everyone is happy. As government encroaches on the free exchange of goods and services, it takes away those choices. Why is it the government's business to decide what we can buy or sell and to whom? Those who love the state say that it is to protect us from the charlatans and people who wish us harm. This is the same government who lies to us constantly or has secrets for our own good. That same government who is supposed to protect us feeds medicines to us that have not been through any long-term testing and prohibits medicines such as cannabis, which has not only proven to be effective, but has no major negative side effects. Again, Adam Smith knew better. The free market is the only viable solution. If medicines are dangerous, the market will turn against them. And if someone is cheating people, the people will respond either by word of mouth or in the age of the internet by blasting the company online. You will notice that up until now, I have not used the word capitalism. That was intentional. The word capitalism was used by Karl Marx to indicate someone who worships money or capital. Those who support the free market do not worship money. They simply trust the market more than governments or mega corporations. That's right, or mega corporations. Giving some company some kind of power over people, which is granted by government, is not capitalism. It's corporatism, can be called fascism. It is a form of socialism. It is not capitalism. Stop saying that it is. Capitalism is just, I want stuff, you have stuff, we work out a deal. Marxist theories, such as socialism and communism, encourage the control of the economy by government. Let's compare those countries who more or less have adopted the economic models of each. The obvious examples for Smith are countries like the United States, Britain, Australia, and even the socialist favorite, Denmark, who recently moved back to a free market economy. Now compare that with Soviet Russia, China before 2000, Venezuela, and even Brazil, with all of its recent corruption and economic woes. In the Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, Kevin D. Williamson compares 4 post-World War II countries: China, India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. These countries chose 2 different paths. China was ravaged by war, but India was not. Both of these countries chose the socialist model of government and controlled economy. The outcome for both was in these countries was the destruction of civil liberties and an economic death spiral. The other 2 countries it compared were Hong Kong and Singapore. Both chose an economy larger based on free trade and flourished. Hong Kong, like China, had been destroyed by the war. Unlike China, it is almost without natural resources, so the cards were stacked against this small country. Yet in 1998, it had the same per capita income as the wealthiest country in the world, the United States. Singapore as well has soared to heights that no one could have imagined, no one except Adam Smith. As Smith would have predicted, with free trade came freer society and protection of civil rights. My first introduction to Adam Smith was through Milton Friedman. His conversations with Phil Donahue, a socialist and talk show pioneer, were hours of enlightening entertainment for my blossoming libertarian mind. Just to be clear, I watched them for the first time on the internet. The show was on television when I was a small child. One of my favorite parts was when Donahue thought that he had Friedman with a quote from Smith. Donahue always tried to paint Friedman as uncaring because he opposed government intervention. The quote was, "I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good." As the talk show host sneered at the economist's hero, Friedman smiled. He knew that Donahue had no idea of the meaning of the quote. The socialist had taken the quote to mean that it does no good to help others. Friedman masterfully explained Smith's point. He said the most important word in that quote was affected. He explained that people who affect or say that they are acting for the greater good purport to act in the interest of society, but most of the time are acting in self-interest. In the often mentioned case of General Motors, he points to the motive of profit. The company affected to act for the greater good, but as with most who seek to control the economy, they did so for personal interest, namely money. And probably a large slice of cutting out competition. Economics is not an exciting subject for most people. When you compare this freedom fighter to the direct actions of Geronimo or the philosophical mind of Thomas Paine, Smith certainly falls short. It is not excitement that makes the warrior of freedom. It is their ability to set themselves or others free. It is no coincidence that many modern leaders, such as Ron Paul or Adam Kokesh, study economics. Without a free market giving needed stability, our fight would be more difficult. People who worry about where their next meal is coming from seldom think too deeply. Liberty in economy simply equals freedom in life. As Adam Kokesh said, quote, "It is all economics. Those who seek to control the economy seek to control property. One of the most precious things you own is yourself. Remember that when the government or anyone else tries to control or manage the economy." Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our new introduction. I'm pretty proud of it. And if you really did like this, please like, share it as far as you can. And if you're watching this on BitChute, please hit that little green button. I'd like to improve our production with things like the new introduction at the beginning. Both Michael and I and Amber are all trying to improve this production. I think we all have very good ideas, and I think that moving forward, we will continue to present not only forgotten freedom fighters, but ideas for the future, and who knows where we may go. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.